You're a worthless father. All my problems are because of you. If it weren't for you, I'd be living like a real man." The venom in my 28-year-old son's voice should have shattered me. Instead, I felt something cold settle in my chest, a strange numbness that sharpened everything around me. "Sorry," I whispered and turned away. But as I walked down that hallway, I realized some lessons in respect can only be taught the hard way. Even when it breaks your heart to be the teacher. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I was organizing receipts when it happened, spread across my kitchen table like evidence of something I wasn't ready to name. Gas station charges, restaurant bills, expensive sneakers I didn't remember buying, all on my credit card, all bearing Noah's signature. The smell of burning eggs snapped me back to reality. I rushed to the stove, scraping the pan just in time to save breakfast. The ritual had become so normal, making breakfast exactly how Noah liked it, scrambled eggs with cheese, melted just right. The kitchen hummed with the familiar morning sounds of coffee brewing and bacon sizzling, a domestic dance I'd performed every morning for the past 8 months since he'd come home. "Lost my job," he'd said then, standing on my doorstep with 2 suitcases and that sheepish grin that used to melt my heart when he was 7. "Just need a few weeks to get back on my feet, Dad." That was 34 weeks ago. But who's counting? I set his plate on the counter, the same spot where I'd left his allowance money 20 years ago, where I'd placed his college acceptance letter, where I'd signed his car loan papers when his credit wasn't good enough. The counter that had become a monument to my investment in his future. Noah shuffled down the stairs in the pajamas I'd bought him last month. Designer ones, because I can't wear cheap stuff, Dad. What if someone sees me? His hair was disheveled, eyes still heavy with sleep, and whatever he'd been drinking last night with his friends. My credit card statement would tell that story soon enough. "Morning," I said, pouring him orange juice, fresh squeezed, not from a carton. He was particular about these things. He grunted, scrolling through his phone. Always the phone. The same phone on my family plan, the same phone that never seemed to receive job alerts but somehow always knew when his friends were going out. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something." His voice carried that familiar tone, the one that preceded requests. Always requests, never gratitude. I felt my shoulders tense, a Pavlovian response I'd developed over the months. My body had learned to brace for impact before my mind even processed what was coming. "The guys and I want to take a trip to Vegas next weekend, just to blow off some steam, you know? Job hunting is really stressful." Job hunting. I glanced at the stack of job applications I'd printed for him 2 weeks ago, still sitting untouched on the hall table like autumn leaves that had simply been forgotten. "Noah, we talked about this. You said you were going to focus on finding work. God, you just don't get it, do you?" The transformation was instant, like a switch being flipped. The sleepy young man vanished, replaced by something harder, angrier. "I'm not some loser who's going to work at McDonald's. I have standards, I have potential, but you just want to keep me down here with you." That's when he said it. Those words that would echo in my mind for days. And in that moment, as I stood there with his breakfast growing cold, I realized I'd been having the wrong conversation entirely. This wasn't about a trip to Vegas. This was about who I'd allowed my son to become. "What do you mean I'm holding you back?" The words came out quieter than I intended, but I could hear something dangerous underneath. A father's patience finally wearing thin. Noah set down his phone with the dramatic flair of someone who believed he was perpetually misunderstood. "You really want to know? Fine. Look at this place." He gestured around our kitchen, the kitchen I'd renovated 3 years ago, complete with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances that still sparkled. "This is your ceiling, Dad, this mediocre suburban existence, but I'm meant for more." I felt something twist in my chest. Mediocre. The word hung between us like smoke. "I worked 60-hour weeks to pay for this mediocre house," I said, my voice still steady. "Worked double shifts so you could go to that expensive college. Oh, here we go." He rolled his eyes, that theatrical gesture I'd watched him perfect since his teenage years. "The martyr speech. I sacrificed everything for you, Noah. Well, maybe I never asked you to." The receipt for his college tuition flashed in my mind. $180,000 over 4 years. I remembered the second mortgage, the canceled vacations, the used car I drove while he had a newer Honda. I remembered his graduation day, how proud I felt watching him walk across that stage, thinking all those sacrifices had been worth it. "You're right," I said, surprising him. "You never asked." But I did it anyway because that's what fathers do. They invest in their children's futures. Investment? Noah laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Is that what you call control? You think because you paid for things, you own me? You think I should be grateful for living in your shadow? My shadow. I looked at this young man, my son, my flesh and blood, and tried to find the little boy who used to build Lego castles with me on Sunday mornings. The child who would run to me when he had nightmares, who believed his father could fix anything. I don't want you in my shadow, Noah. I wanted to give you the foundation to cast your own. Foundation? His voice rose, sharp and cutting. This isn't a foundation, it's quicksand. Every day I stay here, I sink deeper into this. He waved his hand dismissively at everything around us, at me. That's when something shifted in his expression, something cruel and calculated, as if he'd been saving his best weapon for last. You want to know the truth, Dad? The real truth? I nodded, though every instinct told me I didn't want to hear what came next. You're a worthless father. All my problems are because of you. If it weren't for you, I'd be living like a real man. The words hit like physical blows, but what hurt more was the satisfaction in his eyes as he said them, as if he'd been waiting months to deliver this verdict. I stood there for a moment, feeling something cold settle in my chest, that strange numbness that sharpened everything around me. The kitchen suddenly seemed different. The granite countertops I'd saved for, the appliances I'd researched for weeks, the breakfast I'd made with such care. All of it looked foreign now, like props in someone else's life. "Sorry," I whispered and turned away. I walked to the front door, grabbed my keys from the hook, the same hook where Noah's car keys hung, keys to the car I still made payments on. Behind me, I could hear him calling out, his tone already shifting, sensing perhaps that something fundamental had changed in those few seconds. "Dad, Dad, where are you going? We need to finish talking about Vegas." I closed the door quietly behind me. Some conversations I realized were already finished. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, staring at nothing through the windshield. My hands were still shaking. The parking lot of Ralph's grocery store had become my refuge, a place where I could fall apart without Noah watching, without having to pretend I was okay. Worthless father. The words had lodged themselves somewhere deep in my chest, pulsing like a second heartbeat. I kept replaying the moment, searching for some sign I'd misunderstood, some hint that he didn't really mean it. But the satisfaction in his eyes when he'd said it, that cruel little smile, told me everything I needed to know. I needed coffee. Something hot and bitter to wash the taste of humiliation from my mouth. Inside the store, I moved like a ghost past the produce section, the fluorescent lights making everything look sickly and unreal. Then I heard it. The sound that used to be the soundtrack of my nightmares when Noah was little. "I want the robot. I want it now." A little boy, maybe 6, was having a complete meltdown in the toy aisle. His father stood there calmly while the kid threw himself on the floor, kicking and screaming like the world was ending. "I know you want it, buddy," the father said quietly. "But we came here for groceries, and you know the rule. No toys unless it's your birthday or Christmas." "But I need it. Please. I'll be good forever." The father didn't budge, didn't negotiate, didn't promise maybe next time. He just waited for the tantrum to burn itself out, then took his son's hand and walked away. The boy sniffled and followed, the crisis already forgotten. I stood there watching them disappear around the corner, and suddenly I was drowning in memories of a different little boy. Noah at 5, clutching a new toy truck to his chest. "Thank you, Daddy. You're the most wonderful daddy in the whole universe." The way his face would light up, how he'd kiss my cheek and tell everyone at the playground about his amazing father who bought him everything he wanted. God, how I'd lived for those moments. The pure joy, the gratitude that felt like sunlight. I'd started looking for reasons to surprise him. Good grades, helping with chores, sometimes just because it was Tuesday. Every thank you became my proof that I was doing fatherhood right. My own father had been different. Military, discipline, harsh words, consequences that actually meant something. You think the world owes you something, boy? It doesn't. You earn what you get in this life, or you go without. I'd hated him for it sometimes, sworn I'd never be that cold with my own child. I'd give Noah everything I'd felt I'd missed: understanding, generosity, unconditional support. Instead, I'd created a 28-year-old man who thought I was worthless. I bought my coffee and sat down heavily at one of the plastic tables near the deli counter. For months, I'd been asking the wrong question. How can I help Noah? What does he need from me? The right question was simpler and infinitely harder. What was I going to stop giving him? The trigger came from my own living room. I'd returned home after my grocery store revelation, still processing what I was going to do, when I heard voices upstairs, Noah's voice and someone else's, a woman's laugh I didn't recognize. I climbed the stairs quietly, the way I used to when he was a teenager sneaking phone calls after bedtime. But this wasn't innocent teenage rebellion. This was my 28-year-old son in the house I paid for, on the phone I paid for, talking to someone about me. Yeah, he's completely pathetic, Noah was saying, his voice carrying through his partially open door. Like, I feel sorry for him sometimes, you know? He's so desperate for my approval, it's actually sad. The woman laughed. That's terrible, babe, but also kind of sweet. Like, at least he cares. Sweet? No, it's embarrassing. He keeps trying to bond with me or whatever, making me breakfast every day like I'm still 5, paying for everything because he thinks that's what love is. It's honestly pathetic. I pressed my back against the hallway wall, feeling something die inside my chest. My dad was kind of like that, the woman said, always trying to buy my affection after the divorce. Exactly. And the worst part is he actually thinks I'm grateful. Like, he thinks because he sacrifices his whole sad little life for me, I should worship him or something. But honestly, it just makes me respect him less. There was a pause. So what are you going to do? I don't know. Keep letting him pay for everything until I figure my shit out, I guess. I mean, he wants to feel useful, right? And I need the money. It's mutually beneficial. You're using your own father, she said, but she was laughing when she said it. He's using me too, though, for validation, for purpose. What else does he have? His whole identity is being my dad. If I didn't need him, he'd probably have nothing to live for. The cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. Not just the using, I'd suspected that for months, but the calculated nature of it, the psychological profile he'd constructed of me, reducing me to nothing more than a pathetic old man desperate for his son's love. And the worst part, he wasn't entirely wrong. That's when I heard my own voice, clear and steady, from the doorway of his room. Well, this is enlightening. Noah spun around, his face going white. The phone slipped from his hand. Dad, how long have you been? Long enough. I stepped into the room, his room in my house, furnished with my money, decorated with posters I'd bought him. Don't hang up on your friend. She might want to hear this part. Dad, please. I was just telling her the truth about what a pathetic, desperate father you have, about how you're using me for money while feeling sorry for me, about how my whole identity revolves around being useful to you. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Here's the thing, Noah. I picked up his phone from where he dropped it. The call was still connected. She's right about one thing. I was using you too, for validation, for purpose, but not anymore. I ended the call and set the phone on his dresser. You want to see what I'm like when I stop being pathetic? The fear in his eyes told me he was finally paying attention. The fear in Noah's eyes lasted exactly 12 hours. By the next morning, he'd regrouped, recalibrated, and deployed what I now recognized as his signature move, emotional manipulation wrapped in righteous indignation. Dad, we need to talk. He cornered me in the kitchen, his voice heavy with manufactured hurt. I could feel the practiced performance radiating off him like heat, the slight tremor in his voice, the way he positioned himself to look smaller, more vulnerable. I continued buttering my toast, enjoying the way my silence seemed to unnerve him. His fingers drummed against the counter, a nervous habit from childhood that used to make me want to comfort him. Now it just felt calculated. What you did yesterday, listening to my private conversation, that's a serious violation of my privacy. Privacy? In my house? The words came out flatter than I'd intended, but I could see Noah's micro flinch at my tone. Good. Yes, privacy. I'm an adult, and you can't just spy on me like I'm some kind of criminal. He was using his reasonable voice, the one that used to make my chest tighten with guilt, make me apologize for setting boundaries. I watched him lean forward slightly, trying to reclaim the psychological territory he'd lost. I know you're upset about what you heard, but you took it completely out of context. I felt something cold and amused curl in my stomach. Context, please. Explain the context where calling your father pathetic and admitting you're using him for money sounds reasonable. His face flushed. Not embarrassment, I realized, but frustration at being cornered. The mask was slipping, and he knew it. I was venting, okay? Everyone vents about their parents. It doesn't mean anything. You're being incredibly manipulative right now, using my private words against me. The audacity of it, calling me manipulative, should have made me angry. Instead, I felt oddly liberated, like watching a magic trick after learning how it worked. You know what, Noah? You're right. I have been manipulative. I've been manipulating myself into believing that supporting you was helping you. That's gonna stop. What's that supposed to mean? There it was, the first crack in his voice, genuine uncertainty creeping in. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen, a real estate website I'd been browsing since dawn. This apartment complex downtown has some nice studios, very reasonable rent for someone with your standards. The color drained from his face like I'd opened a valve. His hand actually reached out toward the phone, as if he could make the website disappear. You're kicking me out? I'm giving you what you've been asking for. Independence. The chance to live like a real man, wasn't that the phrase? I watched him process this, saw the exact moment he realized I wasn't bluffing. Dad, you can't be serious. Where am I supposed to get money for rent? I don't have a job yet. The desperation was real now, raw and unfiltered. That sounds like a you problem. He stared at me like I'd physically struck him. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly, and I felt a strange satisfaction at seeing him truly speechless for once. This is insane. You're having some kind of breakdown. Mom's gonna hear about this. Your mother. I pulled up my contacts and hit a number I hadn't called in months. Lucy answered on the third ring. Hi, Lucy. It's me. Noah wants to talk to you about his living situation. I held out the phone to him, savoring the panic flickering across his features. Go ahead. Tell her all about your pathetic father. But something had shifted in his expression. The manipulation wasn't working, and he knew it. For the first time since he'd moved back home, Noah was looking at me like I was a stranger. Keep the phone, I said, setting it on the counter. You'll need it to apartment hunt. Oh, and that girlfriend you were talking to yesterday. You might want to call her back. Something tells me you're going to need a new place to crash. I walked toward the door, grabbing my keys from the hook. Where are you going? To see a lawyer. Turns out there are legal ways to help adult children who refuse to help themselves. The drive downtown felt different than any drive I'd taken in years. My hands were steady on the wheel, my breathing calm and measured. I wasn't rushing to fix someone else's problem or anxiously wondering if I'd said the wrong thing. For the first time in months, maybe years, I was driving towards something I wanted to do, not something I felt obligated to do. I kept thinking about that conversation I'd overheard, the casual cruelty of it, the way Noah had dissected my psychology like I was some pathetic specimen in a jar. He thinks because he sacrifices his whole sad little life for me, I should worship him. The words played on repeat, but instead of the sharp pain I'd felt initially, there was something else now. A cold, methodical anger that felt surprisingly productive. He wanted to see what I was like when I stopped being pathetic. Today was going to be educational for both of us. David Chen's law office occupied the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise, all polished granite and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The receptionist, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes, offered me coffee while I waited. Real coffee, not the instant stuff I'd been drinking at home while budgeting for Noah's lifestyle. Mr. Chen will see you now, she said, leading me down a hallway lined with degrees and certificates. David's corner office was exactly what I'd expected from a successful family attorney. Mahogany desk, leather chairs that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, walls lined with law books that looked like they'd actually been read. David himself was shorter than I remembered, with graying temples and the kind of expensive glasses that whispered rather than shouted about money. But his handshake was firm, and when he looked at me, I saw something I hadn't seen in anyone's eyes for a long time: respect for my time. "You sounded different on the phone," he said, settling behind his desk. "Not bad different, just focused. What's going on?" I took a breath and told him everything. The 8 months of support that had turned into exploitation, the escalating demands, the conversation I'd overheard where Noah had called me pathetic and admitted to using me. David's expression grew darker with each detail, his lawyer's mask slipping to reveal something more personal. "Jesus Christ," he said when I finished. He'd taken off his glasses and was cleaning them with more force than necessary. "How long has this been going on?" "The living situation?" 8 months. But honestly, David, I think I've been enabling this behavior for years. I just kept telling myself I was being supportive. The admission felt like pulling out a splinter that had been festering for too long. David put his glasses back on and studied me with the kind of attention I imagined he usually reserved for complex legal briefs. "You know what strikes me most about what you just told me? You're not asking me how to get him back. You're not asking me how to fix the relationship. You're asking me how to end it." The observation hit me with unexpected force. He was right. I wasn't here to salvage anything. I was here to burn it down and start over. "Is that wrong?" I asked. "Wrong? No. Overdue? Maybe." David leaned forward, his elbows on the desk. "I see this more than you'd think. Good parents who can't stop parenting, even when their kids are adults who don't want to be parented. But here's the thing. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face the consequences of their choices." He pulled a thick folder from his desk drawer. "Formal eviction proceedings. It's completely legal. You're not obligated to house an adult child, especially one who's abusing your generosity. How does it work? 30-day notice. Has to be served officially, either by certified mail or in person with a witness. After 30 days, if he's not out, you can get a court order for removal." David's fingers drummed against the folder, not nervously, but with the rhythm of someone who'd done this many times before. "But I have to ask, and I want you to think carefully about this. Are you prepared for the fallout? Because there will be fallout." I thought about Noah's face when I'd caught him on the phone. The way he'd immediately tried to flip the script, make me the villain for overhearing his cruelty, the calculated nature of his manipulation. "David, let me ask you something. Do you have kids?" "2. Daughter in college, son just graduated. If your son called you worthless to your face, then laughed about using you for money to some girl he was trying to impress, what would you do?" David's expression hardened. "I'd probably want to throw him off the nearest bridge." "I'm just throwing him out of my house." "Fair enough." He slid the papers across the desk. "But once you sign this, there's no going back. This will fundamentally change your relationship with Noah. Maybe forever." I picked up the pen, a heavy, expensive thing that felt substantial in my hand. "Good," I said, and signed my name with firm, decisive strokes. As I signed, my phone buzzed. A text from Noah. "Dad, I've been thinking about what happened. I'm really sorry. I was just stressed and said things I didn't mean. Can we please talk when you get home? I want to make this right." I showed David the message. His eyebrows rose. "Funny how they always want to make things right when the consequences show up," he said. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to give him 30 days to figure out what making it right actually means." The drive home felt different than the drive there. Where I'd felt anticipation before, now I felt something calmer but more powerful: resolution. The papers sat in a manila envelope on my passenger seat like a loaded gun. For 28 years, I'd been afraid of disappointing Noah. Now I was looking forward to it. When I pulled into my driveway, I could see him through the living room window, pacing back and forth with his phone pressed to his ear. Even from outside, I could see the agitated gestures, the way he kept running his free hand through his hair. He was in full crisis mode, which meant he'd probably called in reinforcements. I sat in my car for a moment, watching him through the window. My son. The little boy who used to wait by this same window for me to come home from work, who'd run to the door and throw his arms around my legs before I'd even gotten my coat off. When had that child become this calculating stranger? But that was the wrong question, wasn't it? The right question was, when had I stopped being his father and started being his enabler? I got out of the car and walked to my own front door, keys in one hand, eviction notice in the other. Noah saw me coming and quickly ended his call. When I walked in, he was sitting on the couch, my couch in my living room, trying to look contrite, but I could see the wheels turning behind his eyes, calculating his next move. "Dad," he said, standing up with what I now recognized as performed urgency. "I'm so glad you're home. I've been thinking about everything and I owe you a huge apology." I set my keys on the hall table and looked at him. Really looked at him. The expensive clothes I'd bought him. The haircut that cost more than most people spent on groceries. The phone in his hand that I paid for. The roof over his head that I provided. "Have you?" I said. "Yes. What you heard yesterday. God, Dad, I'm so embarrassed. I was just venting to Jessica. You know how it is when you're frustrated. You say things you don't mean." His voice had that practiced quality I'd learned to recognize, but underneath it, I could hear something new. Genuine panic. "Jessica, is that her name?" "Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter. The point is, I was wrong. I was completely wrong, and I'm sorry." He took a step toward me, and I saw him register something in my expression that made him stop. "Dad, are you okay? You look different." "I feel different." I pulled the envelope from my jacket and set it on the coffee table between us. "This is for you." He stared at the envelope like it might explode. "What is it? Open it." His hands were shaking slightly as he tore open the envelope and pulled out the papers. I watched his face as he read, saw the exact moment comprehension hit him. His face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, then something that looked like genuine fear. What? What is this?" "It's a 30-day eviction notice, Noah. You have 1 month to find somewhere else to live." The papers fluttered to the floor as his hands went limp. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." "Dad, this is insane. You can't just throw me out. I'm your son." "Yes, you are, and for 28 years I've been trying to be your father, but somewhere along the way I became your ATM instead." I felt remarkably calm saying it, like I was discussing the weather. "That ends now." His phone rang, probably Jessica calling back, or maybe Lucy. He glanced at it, then back at me, and I could see him trying to decide which crisis to handle first. "Answer it," I said. "You're going to need all the help you can get." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Noah stood there, the eviction papers scattered at his feet, his face cycling through emotions like a broken slot machine. Disbelief, anger, panic, back to disbelief. I watched it all with the detached fascination of a scientist observing a specimen. "You can't do this," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have nowhere to go. You have 30 days to figure that out. Dad, please." The mask was completely gone now, stripped away by sheer desperation. This was the real Noah, not the manipulative charmer or the grateful son, but something raw and frightened and utterly selfish. "I'll change. I'll get a job. I'll pay you back everything." For a moment, just a moment, I felt the old familiar tug in my chest, the parental instinct that had been my downfall for so many years, the voice that whispered, "Maybe he means it this time." But then I remembered the satisfaction in his voice as he'd called me pathetic, the clinical way he'd dissected my psychology for his girlfriend's entertainment. "You had 8 months to change, Noah. You had 28 years to become the kind of person who doesn't need to be evicted by his own father." His phone rang again. This time he answered it, his voice cracking as he spoke. "Mom?" "Yeah, he's serious. He gave me papers, legal papers." He looked at me with something like hatred. "No, I don't think talking to him will help. He's lost his mind." I stood up, brushing imaginary dust from my pants. "I'm going out for a while. When I get back, I want those papers picked up off my floor." "Where are you going?" "To live my life." I drove aimlessly for an hour, no destination in mind, just needing motion and space to process what I'd done. The city rolled past my windows like scenes from someone else's movie. When had I last driven anywhere without a purpose? Without an errand to run for Noah, or a bill to pay, or some crisis to manage? By the time I pulled into the parking lot of a hotel I'd never noticed before, A boutique place downtown with valet parking and a doorman in actual livery, I'd made my decision. Not just about Noah, but about everything. "I'd like a room," I told the desk clerk, a young woman with the kind of professional smile that came from working in hospitality. "Your best available for the weekend." "Of course, sir. Will you be paying with cash or card?" "Card." I pulled out my personal credit card, not the one Noah had been using, but my own private account that I'd been afraid to spend from because I needed to save money for his expenses. "And I'd like to know about your spa services and room service and anything else that might help a man remember what it feels like to enjoy his own money." The room was on the 14th floor with a view of the city skyline. Real Egyptian cotton sheets, a marble bathroom, a minibar stocked with things I'd never tried because they seemed too expensive. I stood at the window, looking out at the lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk, and called my bank. "I need to report fraudulent activity on my account," I told the customer service representative. "Someone has been making unauthorized charges." It was easier than I'd expected. Credit cards canceled, bank accounts frozen, the family cell phone plan discontinued, every financial thread connecting me to Noah's lifestyle severed with a few phone calls and my social security number. My personal phone, the one Noah didn't even know existed, rang around 8 o'clock. I'd bought it months ago, telling myself it was for emergencies, but really, it had been my first unconscious step toward independence. It was Noah, of course. He'd somehow gotten the number, probably from the phone company. I let it go to voicemail, then again at 9 and 10 and 11. I ordered room service, actual room service, with wine and steak and dessert I didn't need but wanted anyway, and listened to the messages while I ate. The first few were panic. Pure, unfiltered terror as Noah realized the scope of what had happened. "Dad, my card isn't working. None of them are working. There's something wrong with the system. Can you call the bank? Dad, they said you canceled everything. That can't be right. There has to be some mistake. Call me back. Dad, this isn't funny anymore. I can't buy gas. I can't buy food. What am I supposed to do?" But by the fourth message, the panic had curdled into something uglier. "I can't believe you're doing this to me. Your own son. What kind of father abandons their child like this? You're sick. You need help." And the fifth, "Fine. You want to play games? I'll go to mom. She'll help me. She never would have done something this cruel." I deleted them all without responding and ordered another bottle of wine. Saturday morning brought a dozen more messages, each more desperate than the last. I listened to them over room service breakfast, real orange juice, not from concentrate, and eggs Benedict that cost more than I usually spent on groceries in a week, and felt nothing but mild curiosity about this person who shared my DNA, but seemed utterly incapable of understanding consequences. I spent the day walking through parts of the city I'd never explored, buying things I wanted instead of things I needed. A book from an independent bookstore, a coffee from a place that charged $5 for a cup and was worth every penny, a shirt that fit me properly because I took the time to try it on instead of grabbing something utilitarian from the discount rack. When had I stopped buying things for myself? When had my entire existence become about facilitating someone else's comfort? Saturday night, Lucy called. I was in the hotel bar, nursing a scotch that cost more than Noah's daily allowance and reading my new book when my phone buzzed. Her name on the screen brought back a flood of memories, not all of them bad, which somehow made this whole situation more complicated. Lucy at 25 laughing at something I'd said over dinner. Lucy holding newborn Noah in the hospital, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, "He's perfect." Lucy packing her bags 12 years later, her voice cold and clinical as she explained why our marriage was over. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Hello, Lucy. What the hell is wrong with you?" No preamble, no pleasantries, just straight to the attack. It was so perfectly Lucy that I almost smiled. She'd always been a woman who preferred direct confrontation to passive aggression, which was one of the things I'd loved about her back when I thought love meant being someone's emotional punching bag. "I'm fine. Thanks for asking. How are you?" I kept my voice deliberately pleasant, taking a sip of my scotch. The burn in my throat felt good, real, immediate, nothing like the slow poison of years of accumulated resentment. "Don't play games with me. Noah called me 3 hours ago, sobbing like his world was ending. He told me you threw him out. Actually, threw him out with legal papers. I could picture her pacing around her apartment. She'd always been a pacer when angry, probably wearing those fuzzy slippers she'd had since college, the ones that made her feel grounded when everything else felt chaotic. I gave him 30 days' notice. Yes. 30 days? Her voice cracked. He's your son. He doesn't have a job. He doesn't have money. He had 8 months to get a job. He chose not to. He's been trying, Lucy. I set down my glass, feeling that familiar surge of frustration I'd lived with for 15 years of marriage. When's the last time Noah told you about a job interview, an application he filled out, a single concrete step he's taken toward employment? The pause that followed was loaded with the weight of recognition. I could practically hear her mental wheels turning, trying to remember a single conversation where Noah had mentioned actual job hunting activities. He's been networking, building connections. Networking. I almost laughed. Is that what we're calling drinking with friends now? Because that's what his networking consists of. Going out with people who also don't work, spending money I earned, complaining about how hard it is to find a job that meets his standards. You don't understand the job market these days. I understand it perfectly. I've been working in it for 30 years while supporting 2 households. The words came out sharper than I'd intended, but I found I didn't care. What I don't understand is why a college-educated 28-year-old can't manage to get hired at Starbucks. He has a degree. He shouldn't have to work at Starbucks. And there it was, the entitlement we'd instilled in him, passed down through generations of well-meaning parents who confused self-esteem with self-delusion. Lucy, what was your first job? What does that have to do with anything? Humor me. I worked at a clothing store in the mall, but that was different. How was it different? The economy was better then. There were more opportunities. Bullshit. The words slipped out before I could stop it, but I didn't apologize. You worked at that clothing store because you needed money and you weren't too proud to earn it. When did we decide Noah was too good for honest work? He's not too good for honest work. He's just what? Too special? Too educated? Too good to start at the bottom like the rest of us did? I could hear her breathing getting faster, the way it always did when she was losing an argument but wasn't ready to admit it. He told me what he said to you, she said finally, her voice quieter, about being a worthless father. He feels terrible about it. Does he? Of course he does. He was upset. He was venting. Lucy, he wasn't venting to me. He was talking to his girlfriend. About me, laughing about how pathetic I am while I was downstairs making him breakfast. You were eavesdropping. I was walking past his room in my own house, and what I heard was our son explaining to some girl how he's using my emotional neediness to fund his lifestyle. Each word felt like pulling out a splinter. He called me pathetic, Lucy. Not angry, not frustrated, clinically pathetic, like I was some sad case study in failed masculinity. The silence stretched between us, filled with years of accumulated hurt and willful blindness. Maybe? Her voice was smaller now, uncertain. Maybe he didn't mean it the way it sounded. He meant every word. And you know what the worst part was? He wasn't entirely wrong. Don't say that. I have been pathetic. I've been so desperate for his approval, so afraid of being the bad guy, that I've funded his refusal to grow up for years. I've enabled him, and I've called it love. You were being a good father. Was I? Because the result of my good fathering is a 28-year-old man who thinks the world owes him a living and calls his provider worthless when he doesn't get what he wants fast enough. I could hear her crying now, soft, muffled sobs that used to be my kryptonite. For 28 years of marriage and 12 years of divorce, Lucy's tears had been the thing that made me back down, apologize, compromise my position to make peace. Not anymore. Lucy, let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer. What? Her voice was thick with tears. When's the last time Noah asked about your life? Not complained about his own problems, not asked for advice or money or emotional support. When did he last show genuine interest in how you're doing? Another long pause. Longer this time. We don't talk about me much. I'm the parent. He's the child. He's 28 years old. Age doesn't matter when it comes to family. It does when it comes to basic human decency. When's the last time he remembered your birthday without being reminded? When's the last time he called just to see how you were? When's the last time he offered to help you with anything? Each question landed like a physical blow. I could hear her breathing change, hear the recognition dawning. That's not. He's going through a hard time. He's been going through a hard time for 10 years, Lucy. At what point does going through a hard time become being a selfish person who uses other people's love as currency? You're being cruel. I'm being honest. For the first time in his adult life, I'm being completely honest about who our son has become. He's not a bad person, isn't he? Lucy, describe Noah to me. Not who you hope he'll become, not who you remember him being as a child. Describe the man he is right now. He's struggling. That's not a description. That's an excuse. What does he do with his time? How does he treat the people who care about him? What does he contribute to the world? The silence that followed was deafening. He's my son, she whispered finally. He's my son too, and that's exactly why I'm doing this. By abandoning him, by refusing to enable him anymore, by making him face the consequences of his choices instead of cushioning every fall. What if he can't handle it? What if something happens to him? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Every parent's worst nightmare, delivered in a voice thick with genuine terror. Then he'll learn to handle it. Or he won't, and that will be his choice. His choice? He's your child. He's a grown man who's been making choices for years. The choice to not work, the choice to live off other people, the choice to treat the people who love him like servants. My voice was steady now, resolved. I can't make his choices for him anymore, Lucy, but I can stop protecting him from the consequences. This isn't protection, it's abandonment. No, Lucy. Protection was paying his bills while he called me worthless. Protection was making his breakfast while he laughed about how pathetic I was to his girlfriend. Protection was enabling his selfishness and calling it love. I stood up from the bar, leaving money on the counter. What I'm doing now is parenting. 20 years too late, but still parenting. The man I married would never have done this. The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. For a moment, I felt the old familiar shame, the voice that told me I was being too harsh, too demanding, too cruel. But then I thought about Noah's laugh, about 8 months of being treated like a combination ATM and cleaning service, about the casual cruelty of being called worthless by someone whose rent I'd been paying. You're right, I said finally. The man you married would have kept enabling Noah until one of us died. He would have funded his lifestyle and apologized for existing and wondered why his son had no respect for him. That's exactly what happened, Lucy. You know why you really left me? Not because we weren't happy, because I didn't know how to command respect. From you, from Noah, from anyone. I thought love meant giving people whatever they wanted, even when it was destroying them. I left because you never fought for anything. Exactly. I never fought because I was terrified of conflict, terrified that if I demanded respect, I'd lose the scraps of affection I was getting. The truth of it hit me like a revelation. But you can't love someone you don't respect, can you, Lucy? That's why you left. Not because I was a bad husband, but because I was a weak one. I could hear her breathing, sharp and ragged. I never said you were weak. You didn't have to say it. You showed it every time you rolled your eyes at my attempts to set boundaries, every time you undermined my decisions about Noah, every time you chose his comfort over my authority as a parent. I was protecting him. From what? From learning that actions have consequences? From discovering that respect has to be earned? From understanding that other people aren't responsible for his happiness? From being hurt? And look how that turned out. We protected him from every small hurt, every minor disappointment, every natural consequence of his actions. And now he's a grown man who thinks the world exists to serve him and calls his father worthless when reality intrudes on his fantasy. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered finally. You can't fix it, Lucy. Neither can I. Only Noah can fix Noah, and he can't do that as long as we keep rescuing him from his own choices. But what if? What if he has to get a job at McDonald's to pay rent? What if he has to live with roommates in a crappy apartment? What if he has to do his own laundry and cook his own meals and figure out how to be an adult without a safety net? Yes. What if all of that? Then maybe he'll finally learn what it means to be a man instead of an overgrown child. Another long pause. You really think he can do it? For the first time in the conversation, I heard something other than anger or tears in her voice, something that sounded almost like hope. I think he's capable of more than we ever demanded of him, but he'll never discover what he's capable of as long as we keep treating him like a helpless child. And if he doesn't, if he fails, then he fails. And that's his right as an adult human being. I could hear her crying again, but softer now. Not the manipulative tears she'd used during our marriage, but something that sounded like grief. When did we go so wrong? She asked. When we decided our job was to make him happy instead of making him strong. I just wanted him to have everything we didn't have. I know. But somewhere along the way, we forgot that struggle builds character, that disappointment teaches resilience, that earning something makes it valuable in a way that being given it never can. So what happens now? Now Noah learns what the rest of us learned decades ago, that nobody owes you a comfortable life just because you exist. And us? There is no us, Lucy. There hasn't been for 12 years. But maybe if we're lucky, someday we'll both have a son we can be proud of instead of one we have to make excuses for. You're a different person, she said finally. Yes, I am. I'm not sure I like this version of you. That's okay. I like him just fine. I hung up and turned off my phone, feeling lighter than I had in decades. Sunday morning, I extended my stay another day, then another. By Wednesday, I'd been at the hotel for 5 days, living off room service and solitude, feeling more rested than I had in years. When I finally went home, the house felt different, cleaner, quieter, more like a home and less like a boarding house for ungrateful adults. Noah's things were gone from the common areas. The kitchen counter was clear of his dishes, his phone charger, the general detritus of someone who assumed other people would clean up after him. I found a note on the coffee table, written on hotel stationery that I recognized from the place I'd just left. He'd been staying there too, apparently. On my former credit card, before I'd canceled it. Dad, I'm staying at the Marriott downtown until I can figure things out. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize I was wrong about everything. I want to make this right, but I need your help. I can't do this alone. Please call me. I love you. Noah. I read it twice, looking for the manipulation, the angle, the carefully crafted words to push my buttons. But all I saw was the handwriting of a scared young man who was finally beginning to understand that actions had consequences. I folded the note and put it in my pocket. Then I went to my computer and booked a trip to Scotland. I'd always wanted to see the Highlands, but there had never been time. Never been money that wasn't needed for something else. Now there was time. Now there was money. Now there was me, finally learning what it meant to live my own life. The plane ticket was non-refundable. I'd be gone for 3 weeks. Noah would have to figure things out without me. For the first time in his adult life, he'd have to figure things out like a real man.